when talking about the most absurd NBA All-Star selections, in 2015, Kyle Korver with his 12 points per game was voted in by the coaches, joining 3 other Hawks players for this game. And it came as a shock to everyone in the NBA, especially to guys like Demar Derozan from the Raptors and young Victor Oladipo representing the Orlando Magic, who both had way stronger cases to make the team. A big reason for some wild All-Star selections was the old rule, where voters had to pick players by position. 2 guards, 2 forwards, and 1 center. The Eastern Conference had a lack of quality centers throughout the 2000s, so players like Indiana's Dale Davis, Antonio Davis from the Raptors the following year, and Jamaal Magloire from the 2004 Hornets are the usual suspects who would get in despite having mediocre numbers. Just compare the bigs from the East with the ones from the West from those years. You see that on average the difference is about 10 points. It's not even close. Roy Hibbert was the last lucky center to benefit from the old way of voting in 2012 when he posted 13-9 and played in his first All-Star game. But what's shocking is that despite not having to choose a classic center from then on, Tyson Chandler somehow got himself a place in the star-studded contest in 2013 while putting up 10-10 for New York. Yeah, the Knicks were decent that season, but I don't know if you deserve an All-Star spot with that kind of stat line. And as if that one selection in 2012 wasn't enough, Roy Hibbert became a 2-time All-Star in 2014 when the voters picked his 11-6 over Al Jefferson's 22-11, making this one of the biggest snubs in league's history. Not to mention that players like Josh Smith, Greg Monroe, and Thaddeus Young all had better seasons with their respective teams. Luol Deng, similarly to Hibbert, is a 2-time All-Star who didn't quite deserve his All-Star selections. Chicago was a force to be reckoned with in the East at that time, but with numbers of 15 in 2012 and 16.5 in 2013, you simply cannot say that Deng should have been an All-Star when players like Danny Granger, Antoine Jamison, DeMar DeRozan, David West, and even J.R. Smith were all left behind with better numbers. Another scandalous big man selection came in 2017 when DeAndre Jordan was voted in the Western Frontcourt reserves in front of Karl Anthony Towns. Just look at that disproportionate numbers. This is ridiculous. And while we're on the topic of big men, we gotta mention Paul Millsap, who got 4 All-Star appearances, and his teammate from those Hawks days, Al Horford, who even has 1 more than Millsap. I'm not saying that they were not good players, and Atlanta was one of the best teams for 2 years under Mike Budenholzer, but heck, guys like Kawhi Leonard and Klay Thompson have 5 All-Stars each as well. And if we talk about players who have more All-Stars than the average NBA fan would have expected, check out these guys on the list. Shawn Marion is a Phoenix Suns legend who averaged a double-double of 18.5 and 10 rebounds per game throughout his 9 seasons with the team. The Matrix, alongside Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire, were extremely fun to watch during those 2000s, and he later won the championship with Dallas in 2011, but he never was the main guy on any of those teams. However, he did find his way to 4 All-Star trips in the period from 03 to 07. Next, Kemba Walker couldn't repeat his college story in the NBA as he wasted his entire prime on a Charlotte Hornets team that never had much success. Still, he managed to get 4 All-Star selections during his 12 years in the league. And when you think about Kyle Lowry, you think about longevity and stability at the point guard position. He even has a ring from that one-year sensation team, the 2019 Toronto Raptors. But nothing flashy or exciting can be connected to his last name, right? It's not like he's a superstar caliber player. Well, he's a 6-time NBA All-Star as he made the team with averages of 14 points and 9 assists in 2019 and 16 and 7 in 2018. And do you know who has 1 more appearance than Kyle in the All-Star games? Joe Johnson. ISO Joe was a 7-time All-Star in this league before he called it a career. We're gonna put aside the Hawks years, even though his last 2 selections for the Eastern Conference All-Stars are quite arguable. But the one that stands out in 2014 when he was chosen after averaging a substandard 16-3 for that high-profile but in reality underachieving Brooklyn Nets team. Now, I'm not saying that they're overrated. But there are a couple of guys for whom you can make the case that they're more deserving but have a lot less All-Stars on their resume. Michael Redd actually outscored ISO Joe in every one of the 4 seasons from 04 to 08, and yet he has just one All-Star nod under his belt. Maybe his Bucks weren't as good as the Hawks in that span, but Michael was a walking bucket and was as good as anyone in his heyday. In 2006, he was left off behind Rip Hamilton and Chauncey Billups despite putting up a much more respectable stat line. And we gotta put one of the Spurs' all-time greats in this category as well. Manu Ginobili was a key piece for San Antonio's franchise alongside Tim Duncan and Tony Parker. He always had another gear to turn into when the playoffs started. Manu helped the Spurs win 4 titles and was voted twice in the All-NBA teams, but he was only a part of 2 All-Star games. He surely deserved to be in the contest in 08 when he averaged a career-high 19.5 points and 5 rebounds alongside 4.5 assists per game, but came up short to Brandon Roy. Trae Young is still very young to be in these conversations as he's about to enter his 6th season in the league, but surprisingly to me and probably to most of you has only 2 All-Star nods. I wouldn't be mentioning him if he wasn't the last year's biggest snub when he was left off the game even after posting 27 and 10 till early February. Drew Holiday and Tyrese Halliburton were selected ahead of him with significantly weaker numbers. And if we have honorable mentions in this category, they would be Carmelo Anthony, who was the biggest snub in 06 when he averaged 26.5 points along with 5 rebounds and still didn't make the team in front of Pau Gasol, for example, who had a stat line of 20 and 9. Amari Stoudemire with 6 All-Star selections and Devin Booker with 3. And to wrap things up, we have another half a dozen scandalous All-Star selections. Andre Iguodala in 2012 is one of the most extreme examples as he got an All-Star nod with averages of 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. At the time, Josh Smith led the Hawks to a similar record as the 76ers, plus he was a top 20 scorer in the league with almost 19 points per game along with 9.5 rebounds and still couldn't get the spot over Iggy. Before the 2009-2010 season, the Golden State Warriors drafted Steph Curry, but he was the team's 3rd offensive option that year as Corey Maggette and Monte Ellis ran the show. The 24-year-old electric guard at the time went ballistic as he scored 30 or more points on 24 occasions and 3 times went above the 40-point margin. Monte finished the season as the 6th leading scorer in the league, but weird enough, he came up short to the 36-year-old Jason Kidd in the race for the West reserves. J. Kidd was way past his prime in Dallas, and even though they had a great season, Kidd averaged a subpar 10 points and 9 assists per game as the team's facilitator. Ellis' snub for the 2010 All-Star Game still remains to this day one of the biggest in NBA history. Nick Van Exel was the 4th member of his team to join the Western All-Stars in 1998 when he, alongside Shaq, Kobe, and Eddie Jones, led the Lakers to the 3rd best record in the league. This was the first time in All-Star history that one team had 4 representatives. Nick the Quick had better individual seasons before and after this, but it was the team's success that got him in the contest with all the stars. He averaged 14 points and 7 assists per game that season, in which Michael Finley was the obvious snub with 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Ray Allen and Stephon Marbury also had better stats than Van Exel. And in the 93-94 season, the world saw Michael Jordan retiring from the NBA at his peak, leaving Chicago in Pippen's hands. Scottie embraced the role and led the team to a strong 55-27 record, and the Bulls had 3 participants at the All-Star Game mid-season. Besides Pippen and Horace Grant, B.J. Armstrong made the jump from 12 to almost 15 points per game, but was nowhere near the numbers of players like Glenn Rice with 21 points per game, Joe Dumars with 20.5, and Reggie Miller with 20 points per game, who were all left empty-handed. Let me know in the comments if I forgot some horrible All-Star selections. Talk to you in the next one. Peace out. Hey, the mini hoop is back with a bang. Peace.